Wallace Stevens's poem Sunday Morning is in the form of a conversation or philosophical dialogue between the central character, a woman who is on a quest to find spiritual fulfillment, and the voice of the poet who attempts to aid her during her journey. The poem could also be regarded as a conversation between self and soul, between the social self that feels pressured to conform to traditional religious doctrines and the internal self that desires a more natural connection with the world. Its 15-line stanzas of blank verse begins with the woman's precarious situation. Initially, she feels contentment spending Sunday morning at home, surrounded by the comfort and beauty of her physical environment. But soon, guilt over her dismissal of traditional Christian rituals on Easter Sunday undermines her pleasure, and she becomes filled with spiritual anxiety, conflicted about which path she should take to spiritual fulfillment. After this first stanza, the poem becomes a dialogue between her voice and that of the poet, between the woman's philosophical questionings and his assertion that she can find satisfaction only through a personal, intense communion with the natural world. Most stanzas begin with the question posed by the woman that is answered by the authoritative voice of the poet, reaffirming his position that sensual pleasures supersede any contentment gained from the red religions of the past. He presents his argument through association and juxtaposition, continually finding alternate ways to present the same point of view. The cumulative effect of the repeated images results in a convincing argument against a devotion to the tenets of Christianity and for a dedication to an appreciation of and communion with the beauty of nature. Stevens employs two dominant image clusters, which he continually juxtaposes against each other to illustrate his thematic points. He associates the natural world with the warmth of the sun, which the woman enjoys at the beginning of the poem during her leisurely morning at home on this particular Sunday morning. The sun returns in stanza 7 as the speaker personifies his pagan vision in his description of a ring of men chanting in orgy on a summer morn. The life giving properties of the sun are echoed in the vibrant colors associated with the natural world. Initially, the woman lounges complacently on this Sunday morning, surrounded by the vivid colors of the oranges she is eating and the green freedom of her parrot that has been released onto her rug. Stevens evokes the pleasures of other senses in this setting through the odors of plum and pear. Sound ultimately unifies humans with nature when the men's boisterous chant echoes off the hills long after they have stopped. Stevens links an absence of sound to Christianity, suggesting that those mythological voices do not carry into present realities. He reinforces this sense of absence when the woman hears a voice that tells her that no spirits linger in Jesus' tomb. The vibrant colors of nature are juxtaposed with dark ancient sacrifices, ceremonies of blood. This cluster of images reinforces the speaker's premise that Christianity is a dead religion that can no longer offer contentment and salvation. Let's see the summary of the poem. In the first stanza, a complacent woman lounges in her dressing gown late into a Sunday morning, eating a leisurely breakfast and enjoying the vivid, vibrant beauty of the natural world around her. She takes great pleasure in her coffee and oranges, her mood reflected by the sunny chair and the cockatoo that has been released onto the rug. She is spending a morning at home instead of going to church. The reference to the holy hush of ancient sacrifice suggests that the day is Easter Sunday. Initially, the pull of the natural world dissipates the traditional power this day has over the woman, as she has chosen not to take part in Christian rituals. However, as she dreams, the pleasure she experiences this morning is soon extinguished by the dark encroachment of that old catastrophe, a reference to the crucifixion of Christ. She recognizes that the secular beauty she appreciates is not eternal, and so the colorful oranges and parrot, earlier appearing so full of life, now seem things in some procession of the dead. She becomes caught up in Christian dogma as her dreaming feet transport her to the dominion of the blood and sepulchre, symbolic of the ritualistic ceremony in celebration of the Last Supper and Christ's interment. The blood refers to the wine and the sepulchre to the church of the Holy Sepulchre that contained the tomb where Christ's body was laid on Good Friday. Thus, the sensual pleasure of the late morning coffee and oranges has been replaced by the spiritual satisfaction of the bread and wine communion. The voice of the poet questions a woman's decision to turn her back on the beauty of the natural world and devote herself to her religion. He insists that she could find divinity through a connection to the splendor of the earth. Her earthly pleasures, which he enumerates in this stanza through images of the seasons, should be as cherished as the thought of heaven. The poet exhorts her to appreciate the very transience of her world since it encompasses the pleasures and pains of living. These passions, not the superstitions that live in silent shadows and in dreams, are the measures destined for her soul. In the third stanza, the speaker expands his focus on religion to the Greek god Jove, who had no traditional family to nurture him and no natural connection to this sweet land. The speaker links the ancient myth to the birth of Christ through the reference to the star that guided the shepherds and the wise men to Bethlehem. Both myths, he suggests, are disconnected from human reality. As humanity finds the divine in the natural world, the sky will appear friendlier, no longer marking the division between heaven and earth. The woman's voice returns at the beginning of the next two stanzas as she questions the poet's argument that earthly pleasures will provide spiritual fulfillment. While nature fills her with contentment, she wonders whether she can find paradise there. Here, the poet reasserts and clarifies his position. In his response, he acknowledges the impermanence of the world, but argues that the bliss she experiences observing the beauty of nature is everlasting through immediate observance of the spring and through the vividness of her memory. Christian theology, with its chimera of grave or even its melodious aisles, will not endure as will the magnificence of nature for her. She complains that even while experiencing contentment in her relationship to the natural world, she feels a need of some imperishable bliss, which Christianity insists can be found only in complete devotion to the church. The poet counters death is the mother of beauty, asserting that she can only experience true satisfaction through the appreciation of that which is impermanent. To prove his point, he describes the passions of youth, symbolized by the ripening of plums and pears. When death strews the leaves of sure obliteration on our paths, lovers' desires will be heightened as they realize the importance of the moment. In stanza 6, the poet continues his argument that death is the mother of beauty, juxtaposing it with a counter vision of the stasis of heaven, with its ripe fruit that never falls, hanging heavy in that perfect sky. The rivers there never pour out into the seas or touch the shores. In contrast, our perishing earth of beginnings and endings is colored with inarticulate pangs and delicious tastes and odors of pear and plum, where she lounges during silken weavings of afternoons. The next stanza suggests an alternative to traditional worship. The poet describes a pagan, almost savage celebration of the earth as a ring of men chant sensuous songs praising the beauty of a summer morning. They do not worship a specific god, but the earth for them has the same intense power that had previously been associated with the Christian God, and thus they are devoted to it. as they strip naked in an act of merging their energies with those of nature, they experience paradise. Their chant encompasses all the elements of nature, the windy lake, and the angelic trees as their songs echo off the hills long after they leave. The poet symbolizes this heavenly fellowship between nature and the men by noting the dew upon their feet as they dance and chant. The voice of the poet and that of the woman come together in acceptance of an alternative form of worship in the final stanza of the poem. The single voice here notes the inevitability of decay and death and understands that an appreciation of that mutability enriches present experience. The woman acknowledges that Jesus' tomb was not endowed with mystical spirits, that it only contained his grave. She now turns to the natural world with its old chaos of the sun and its understanding of days and nights, beginning and ends. This realignment with the pagan world of earthly pleasures releases her from the bounds of her religion so that she is now unsponsored and free. The natural world is full of the spontaneous cries of its creatures in their beautiful surroundings. The final line reinforces the statement that death is the mother of beauty, as the free flying pigeons on extended wings rise and fall following no prescribed course but eventually descend into darkness at the close of day. The woman in the poem moves back and forth between belief and doubt as she enters into a dialogue with a poet about spiritual fulfillment. At the beginning of the poem, she appears to be content in her newfound appreciation of the earthly pleasures of the natural world. This world, with its vivid colors and leisurely breakfast, offers her a sense of freedom in the time she allows herself to appreciate the bounty of nature. Soon, however, doubt over the choice she has made this Sunday morning ruins her serenity. As she appreciates the sensuality of nature, she experiences a growing awareness and dread of its transitory nature. As a result, she becomes filled with spiritual anxiety to the point that she begins to believe that a reversion to Christian rituals and dogma will lead to salvation. As the speaker tries to convince her to return to her world of earthly delights, she struggles to maintain her belief in the traditional theology through a series of questions on the nature of that theology. She wonders whether earth will seem all of paradise that we shall know, especially given its impermanence. Nature fills her with contentment, yet she asks, when the birds are gone and their warm fields return no more, where then is paradise? She continually resists the poet's promotion of a spiritual connection to nature, insisting, I still feel the need of some imperishable bliss, which she had found in a Christian vision of eternity. The speaker's voice, however, never wavers from his assertion that she must find divinity within herself and that this can only be accomplished through a communion with nature. By meeting each question with an imaginative yet logical response, the speaker slowly convinces her to doubt her old beliefs in the divinity of traditional religion. By the end of the poem, she has returned to the position she held at the beginning, again aligning herself with the freedom of birds, unsponsored in her attachment to her natural world.